A tired man in ragged clothes walks into a diner and quietly orders a steak. The waitress serves him with a smile, then slips a folded napkin under his plate. What he reads changes everything. But here's the twist: that man wasn't just hungry. He was a millionaire in disguise, testing the world. And that waitress? About to have her life flipped upside down in a way she never saw coming. The evening started just like any other. It was a slow-paced Tuesday at Millie's Diner, a small, cozy restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta. The kind of place where the floors creaked, the coffee was always brewing, and the locals knew each other's names. The diner's lights cast a soft glow over empty tables. A few regulars sat sipping on hot chocolate or browsing through old newspapers. The air smelled like fried chicken, fresh biscuits, and just a hint of lemon-scented cleaner. Behind the counter, 27-year-old Tia Monroe tied her apron for the second time that day. She was working a double shift, again. She barely had time to finish her last cup of cold coffee before taking her first order of the evening. It had been a tough week, but then again most weeks were. Single mom to a 5-year-old daughter, Tia was no stranger to hardship. Every dollar she made was carefully counted: rent, groceries, daycare, gas. Some days she skipped meals just to afford her daughter's necessities. But you'd never know from her smile, warm, genuine, always inviting. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's drink order, who added extra whipped cream if she knew someone had a rough day, and who noticed the loneliness in people's eyes. But that night something unusual happened. At exactly 7:18 p.m., the bell above the door jingled, that charming little ding that always brought everyone's attention to the entrance. The only person who looked up was Tia. A tall man stepped through the door. He looked tired. He wore an old gray hoodie, slightly wrinkled jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His scruffy beard, worn sneakers, and the way he quietly shuffled to the corner booth screamed blue-collar guy down on his luck. No watches. No flashy phone. Not even a wallet visible in his hand. Some of the other waitstaff barely noticed him. Slow nights don't bring high tippers, and judging from this man's appearance, no one rushed to greet him. But Tia? Tia immediately approached him with a smile. "Evening. Welcome to Millie's. You want coffee, tea, or maybe a glass of cold sweet tea to beat the heat?" she offered, handing him a menu that had seen better days. He glanced up briefly, gave a soft thank you, and nodded toward the sweet tea. She didn't push conversation. She didn't look twice at his attire or make assumptions. She just served him with care, like she always did. But what neither she nor the other employees knew was, this man wasn't average. Not even close. His name? David Grant. A self-made millionaire. CEO of Grant Investments, one of the most successful enterprise software companies in the country. But he built his fortune out of nothing, growing up homeless in Chicago, working odd jobs in his teens, and slowly carving a path to success others never thought possible. And perhaps because of that past, he never forgot what it felt like to be hungry, to sleep in your car, to be invisible. Over the past few years, David began doing something remarkable. He started traveling undercover, visiting small diners, working-class towns, and local businesses around the U.S., not as a rich executive in private jets, but disguised as just another customer. His mission? To find people who stood out not because of their resumes, but because of their heart. And what better place than an ordinary diner, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, where no one hides behind a fake smile or a polished profile. This wasn't just dinner. It was a quiet test, a window of observation. And the first thing David noticed? Tia. Her energy wasn't forced like a practice server routine. She didn't treat him any differently from the smiling couple 2 booths down, or the lonely senior in the corner ordering the same soup every Tuesday. There was compassion in her service, pride in her work, and kindness that felt rare. As Tia took his order, medium-well steak with mashed potatoes and garlic bread, she smiled. "You look like you've had a long day," she said casually. David chuckled softly. "You could say that. Then we'll make sure your meal makes it better," she replied. He watched her walk away, still unsure what it was about her, but he felt it. Realness. Warmth. And most surprisingly, something he hadn't received in a long time despite all his power and wealth. Genuine human kindness. He didn't know it yet, but that kindness would soon change everything, for her and for him. And just as the smell of grilled steak began to fill the diner, Tia was preparing something even more unexpected, a note. A small, simple message she didn't need to write. But something told her she should. And in just a few minutes, it would be on its way, hidden under a steaming plate of steak. To everyone else, Tia Monroe was just a waitress with a great smile. But smiles can be deceiving. Behind that cheerful, "How can I help you today?" and those long hours on tired feet, was a heart heavy with worry, a storm she hid better than anyone realized. Because while she served coffee and carried plates, her mind was somewhere else, constantly spinning with fears she couldn't afford to say out loud. She was a single mom raising her daughter Camille, just 5 years old, smart, sweet, and full of questions only kids think to ask. Camille adored painting rainbows, watching cartoons, and sitting at the diner booth coloring while Tia worked late into the night. Tia's life revolved around her daughter. Every smile, every late shift, every skipped meal. It was all for Camille. But lately, even love was being stretched thin by life. The rent was 2 weeks overdue. The electricity bill had a red stamp that made Tia sick to look at. All it would take was one emergency, a busted tire, a hospital visit, anything, and she'd be out of options. She had no family nearby. Her parents had passed years ago. Camille's father? Out of the picture before Camille could even say, "Daddy." Still, Tia never asked for pity. She didn't want handouts. She wanted to fight, to work, to provide, to build a better life. But lately, despite her best efforts, she felt like she was drowning, gracefully, silently. In the diner? Millie's diner? It wasn't just a job anymore. It was her last thread of stability. She worked double shifts when no one volunteered. Picked up Saturdays. Skipped breaks just to make sure her section ran smooth. Most of her coworkers never knew how bad things really were. She'd joke, smile, talk about her daughter, and hide the fact that she couldn't buy herself new shoes though the heels on her old ones were worn down to cardboard. And that Tuesday night, the night the stranger came in wearing a hoodie and sitting quietly in the corner, was one of the lowest ones she'd had in a while. Because earlier that day her babysitter called off. Tia had to drop Camille with a neighbor and promise she'd be back by 9. It wasn't ideal, but it was the only way to keep her shift. Before she left for work, she looked at her daughter and promised, "Mommy's gonna make today better." But better didn't come easy, and she was already behind on tips for that shift. So when that worn-looking man, the stranger in the hoodie, sat down and quietly ordered a steak with a side of mashed potatoes, Tia figured he was just like many others. Passing through, maybe between jobs, looking for a filling meal to take the edge off. But something about him stood out. It wasn't his clothes or how he avoided eye contact. It was something in his eyes, tired yes and maybe even burdened. She'd seen that look before, in the mirror. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt a tug in her heart. That little nudge that said, "Be kind. Say something. Do something." So, as she prepared his meal in the back, she grabbed a clean napkin and quietly jotted down a few heartfelt lines. Nothing too dramatic. Just honest words from someone who knew how hard life could get, and how far a little hope could go. She folded the napkin carefully and tucked it inside her apron pocket. When the steak was ready, hot, juicy, and smelling incredible, she slid it onto a tray, added the bread, and walked it over to his booth. "Your steak's ready, sir," she said with a smile. "And, here's something just for you," she added, sliding the folded napkin just underneath the plate so only he would see. She didn't wait for a reaction. She just went back to work like nothing happened. To her it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a speech or a grand gesture. It was just a note. A tiny piece of comfort. A message that said, "Hey stranger, I see you. You're not invisible. And you're not alone." She didn't expect to hear back. Didn't expect a thank you or a reaction. In fact, she worried he might think she was strange for doing it. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, is that man wasn't down on his luck at all. He was a multimillionaire on a mission. And that note she'd written without overthinking? The one she folded and forgot? It would soon change her entire future. Forever. When the plate hit the table, it looked like every other steak dinner served in that little Atlanta diner. Medium well, golden brown on the outside with a side of mashed potatoes and soft garlic bread. But underneath the warm ceramic plate was something so small, yet so powerful, it would ripple through 2 completely different lives. David Grant, the undercover millionaire, had just been served. He had kept his head down, played his role perfectly. Scruffy, tired, humble in appearance. Just another customer grabbing dinner at a quiet diner on a slow Tuesday night. But now something had shifted. When Tia, the waitress, gave him his steak, she'd leaned in and gently said, "Your steak's ready, and here's something just for you." He thought maybe it was a coupon. Or a simple thank you. But as she walked away, blending back into her shift, something about the way she moved told him it wasn't just routine. Curious, David looked under the plate and spotted the edge of a folded napkin. He pulled it out gently. Inside was a handwritten note. No name. No signature. Just a few carefully written lines in blue ink, slightly smudged as though written quickly and emotionally. Here's what it said. You look like you're carrying a lot. I don't know what you're going through, but I want you to know, your life matters. You're strong and you've made it this far for a reason. You may feel invisible right now, but someone sees you. Rest if you need to. Keep going. No emoji. No religious quote. No dramatic flair. Just one human reaching out to another in quiet kindness. David stared at the message. His eyes didn't tear up. He had trained himself not to show too much emotion in public, but a wave of something deep ran through him. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had offered him compassion without knowing who he was. Without expecting anything in return. This wasn't a fan bowing to a billionaire. This wasn't someone kissing up to a CEO in hopes of a promotion. This was a woman who saw what she thought was a stranger struggling, and wanted him to feel seen. And the truth was, though David had all the money anyone could dream of, he had been struggling in ways even he hadn't fully acknowledged. The success, the wealth, the interviews, the investments, the Forbes mentions, they were all real, but recently they had started to feel empty. He thought going undercover would help him better understand who really deserved help. But now he was the one being seen. And that's when the entire purpose of his visit became clear. He had planned to search carefully, spend nights traveling, meet dozens of people before choosing someone extraordinary. But this was different. Tia wasn't just a good waitress. Tia was rare. While carrying her own unspoken battles, she still found the strength to notice others. Instead of sinking into her own struggles, she extended her hand, through a napkin, through a note. With no idea the person she was helping was someone who had the power to change her life with a single decision. David folded the note again, gently slipping it into his jacket pocket like it was something sacred. He didn't respond outwardly. Didn't ask Tia about it. Didn't say thank you in a dramatic way. Why? Because the test wasn't over. Not yet. He wanted to see, one more time, how she treated him after. Would she expect something back? Would she change her tone now that she had done something kind? But no. Tia was back at work moments later like nothing had happened. Helping an elderly man refill his coffee. Smiling at a teenage couple who came in for milkshakes. Offering napkins to a woman with her baby carrier and diaper bag. To her, that note was just part of the job, the unwritten job of being human. And to David, that was the answer he came looking for. He sat back and took a breath. His test was over. And he had found the one. As he finished his plate and left a normal-sized tip, he stood up and caught Tia's eye. Thanks, he said sincerely. I'll be back. She smiled politely back. Just another satisfied customer? Or so she thought. What she didn't know was that her quiet act of kindness, those 47 words scribbled on a napkin that took 20 seconds to write, had just unlocked a future she couldn't even imagine. The millionaire walked out of the diner unnoticed by everyone. Everyone except Tia, who watched him go with nothing but a peaceful smile. But the next time he walked in, he wouldn't come alone. And he wouldn't be undercover anymore. The next morning at Millie's diner started just like any other. By 7 a.m., Tia was already there, wiping down tables with practiced hands and a tired smile. The warmth of the coffee machine filled the air, and the radio played old soul music in the background. She greeted the regulars, poured orange juice for the early risers, and powered through the morning rush, all without knowing that today wouldn't end like any day she'd ever lived before. Because around 10:43 a.m., everything changed. The bell above the door jingled just like it always did. Ding. But this time something felt different. Instead of a weary traveler or a family of four, the man who entered the diner walked in with calm confidence. He was wearing a sleek navy suit, polished shoes, and a crisp shirt that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle in its life. He wasn't alone either. Two assistants followed behind him. One held a camera. Another carried a briefcase. A black town car was parked right in front of the diner's window, a bold contrast to the dusty pickups usually parked outside. The quiet chatter inside stopped. Forks were paused mid-air. Customers turned. Staff peeked around the kitchen door. And Tia? She froze. Her heart thumped in her chest. Because she recognized him. It was the man from the night before. The one in the hoodie and worn-down shoes. The one she had served steak and sweet tea. The man she had slipped a napkin note to as if it were nothing. Only now, he looked like Mr. Wall Street himself. Before she could even make sense of what was happening, the man spotted her from across the room and smiled. Tia Monroe, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. She blinked in confusion. Why yes. I told you I'd be back, he said. But I'm not here for lunch. He motioned for the assistant to open the briefcase. Inside was a simple, elegant white envelope. No company name. No promotional material. Just TIA handwritten in gold ink on the front. He handed it to her. Tia took it slowly, hands trembling. She opened it, and what she saw made her gasp out loud. A cashier's check. For $50,000. Her knees buckled for a moment, and a nearby busboy rushed over with a chair. What is this?" she whispered, eyes wide. "I came in last night pretending to be someone I'm not," he explained. "But that letter you gave me? That wasn't pretend. That was real. And it reminded me of something I had forgotten, that kindness matters even when nobody's watching." She shook her head slightly, still stunned. "I didn't give you that to get anything from you," she said quietly. "And that's exactly why you deserve this," he replied. Then he handed her another envelope. Inside was a letterhead with an invitation, a job offer to join one of his nonprofit foundations, a leadership and mentorship program for single mothers. He wanted Tia to help lead community outreach in Georgia, recognizing in her what leaders are truly made of: empathy, resilience, and strength. "You've been working so hard just to survive," he said. "Now it's your turn to thrive." Cheers erupted from the diner staff and customers. One of the cooks shouted, "You go, girl," while another waitress had tears in her eyes. Tia sat in stunned silence for a moment. She had come in expecting another hard double shift, hoping just to make tips and get home before Camille needed her. Now, she had the chance to completely change her life. Her daughter could finally start school with new shoes and a safe home. No more overdue bills. No more living day by day. Tia looked up at the man, David Grant, though she still didn't know just how famous and important he really was. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. He smiled. "You already said it. Last night. On that napkin. You said everything the world needed to hear, and most importantly, you chose kindness when you didn't have to." And with that he left, leaving the envelope, the job offer, and a room full of shocked and inspired people behind. As the town car rolled away from the curb, Tia stood in the middle of the diner, still holding the check and the letter. Tears rolling down her face, her co-workers embracing her. But they weren't just celebrating her luck. They were celebrating the fact that kindness won. That sometimes in life all it takes is a simple act, a few written words, a small moment of courage, to change everything. Tia stood in the center of Millie's diner, still holding the check and job offer clutched tightly in her hands. Her co-workers were cheering, hugging her, taking photos. Some were crying. Others stood in stunned silence. Behind her smile were tears she couldn't hold back anymore. Just last night, she was worrying about whether the neighbor would keep watching her daughter if she couldn't pay on Friday. She had only $32 in her bank account. And here she was now, holding the key to the life she had always dreamed of, but didn't think she could ever reach. All of it, because of a napkin note. Life didn't change in a grand moment with fireworks. It changed quietly with kindness. With a folded piece of paper written by hand from the heart. That was the moment everything turned. In the weeks that followed, Tia stepped into a completely new chapter. With the money from David Grant, she paid off all her past due bills, cleared her credit card debt, and moved into a safe, warm apartment in a better neighborhood. A place where her daughter Camille could finally sleep soundly at night. She enrolled Camille in preschool, bought her first brand new backpack, colorful sneakers, and even a tiny pink little lunchbox with stars on it, the one Camille had pointed at 6 months ago but Tia had to say no to. And that job offer? That was no empty gesture. David invited Tia into his mentorship network, a program that worked with nonprofits across the country to support single mothers, former foster youth, and overlooked workers battling poverty. Her role didn't require a fancy degree or a polished resume. It required heart. And Tia had more heart than most CEOs. She worked as a liaison between the foundation and women across the state, women like herself who were fighting to break the cycle and give their children something better. She helped them get into housing, job training, childcare programs, and more. And every time one of those women told her, "I don't think I can do this," she would nod, smile, and say, "I thought the same thing, until someone reminded me how much I mattered." She printed that quote, the exact note she once wrote on the napkin, and framed it in her new office. It hung right above her desk. Your life matters. You may feel invisible right now, but someone sees you. One day during a team meeting, David visited the office. He saw that framed napkin quote and chuckled gently. "You kept it," he said. "Of course," Tia smiled. "It's what changed everything." But David shook his head slowly. He said, "It didn't just change your life, Tia. Changed mine too. I came here thinking I was the one with something to give. I left here reminded that the real power isn't money, it's empathy. That's when she realized, this wasn't luck. This wasn't charity. This wasn't fate. This was the result of living with compassion, even when it hurts. Because you'll never know who's across the table, or what they're dealing with, or what power they hold in their hands. But your kindness might be the first light they've seen in a long time. Tia kept working, not just to provide for Camille but to pass that light on to others. She launched parenting workshops, joined community panels, even spoke on stage at a women's empowerment conference. The media picked up her story. Waitress writes note to struggling man. Turns out he was a millionaire. It went viral. But she didn't care about fame. She cared about the women in her community still waiting tables, still working those extra shifts, still folding their dreams away in the back pocket of someday. Tia made it her mission to tell them. Kindness counts. Your story matters. It's not over. And you're not alone. Years later, in a quiet moment at a local high school where she was asked to speak, a student raised their hand and asked, "What would have happened if you never wrote that note?" Tia thought for a moment, then smiled. Honestly, I might still be at that diner hoping life would give me a break. But sometimes you don't wait for life to change. Sometimes, you just take your heart, fold it into a small message and send it into the world. And if the right person reads it, it just might come back and change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe and share it with someone who needs a little light in their life today. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe small acts of kindness can spark the biggest changes. We'll see you in the next inspiring story.